Sweetheart, coffee, black, 2 sugars. Then out. The grown-ups are about to plan an actual operation. The room had a mahogany table, 14 chairs, recessed screens cycling through standby graphics, and the low hum of a secure facility's ventilation running behind everything like a held breath. Naval Amphibious Base, Coronado. Joint Operations Center. Classification level. Compartmented. The woman in the navy polo shirt and charcoal slacks was setting folder packets at each chair with the unhurried precision of someone who had done this 100 times before. She had. Just never as a civilian. Colonel Hollister Kraft walked in 9 minutes early. He always did. 51 years old, United States Marine Corps. J3 Operations Officer at Naval Special Warfare Command on a cross-service joint billet. 31 years of rank worn the way a man wears a good suit, like it's his by right, and always was. He saw the woman with the folders. He clocked the carafe on the credenza. He gestured at it without breaking stride, still talking over his shoulder to Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, his deputy, who followed him the way shadows follow a light source, automatically, without decision. The woman crossed the room, poured the coffee, set it down in front of his chair, one motion, no extra movement, the way a cartridge seats in a chamber. She stepped back to the wall. "Sir." That was all. One syllable. Kraft was already looking at his phone. At the far end of the table, Master Chief Petty Officer Eldon Rourke watched her say it. 58 years old. Retired recall, Naval Special Warfare Group consultant, present at this brief, because 3 decades in maritime special operations had built a knowledge base the command had decided they still needed access to. The retired recall billet was a 3-month extension that had become 14 months, the way useful billets always did. He was not surprised. He was rarely surprised. He watched her cross back to the wall. He noted the time. 11 minutes she had been in this room. He picked up his coffee and filed the syllable away without writing anything down. There were 12 people who would eventually be in this room, and he was the only one who had arrived before her. He had arrived at 07:15, 43 minutes early, because he was always early. She had been there when he walked in, already working the folders in the order of the seating chart, and she had given him one syllable then, too. Morning. Not good morning. Not sir. Just morning. Flat and brief. The greeting of someone whose entire vocabulary budget for the day had been set at 0 expense. The room filled in the next 7 minutes. 8 additional personnel, mix of Navy and Marine, took their seats. A junior analyst, petty officer 2nd class Tran, 28, glasses, a folder he'd already annotated, nodded a quiet thanks when the woman set his packet down. She gave him one syllable back. Copy. Rourke's head moved 3 degrees left. He set his coffee down. He was counting now. Not because anything was wrong. Because 32 years of watching operators pretend to be things they weren't had given him a calibration that ran whether he wanted it to or not. She had been in the room 11 minutes. He had already counted 3 things that didn't add up. The screens came fully active. Kraft settled in at the head of the table, expansive, both hands flat, the posture of a man who owns the room and wants to make sure the room knows it. He name-dropped his Pentagon access in the first 2 minutes. Cited his direct line to Indo-PACOM J3 in the 3rd. Webb laughed at the right moments, which was easy because Kraft always paused at the right moments. Kraft held his cup sideways, without speaking, without looking. The woman refilled it. He didn't look at her then either. He had 31 years of rank. She had 9 weeks of patience. In this building, on this morning, it looked identical. The formal brief began at 07:53 hours. The woman returned to the wall. Rourke opened his notebook to a blank page and wrote nothing. He clicked his pen once. Then he looked at the floor, just for a moment, just at the toe of one boot visible below the hem of the charcoal slacks. Matte, black, low-profile chassis, speed lace system, the kind of sole designed for wet deck traction and ladder work. He looked at them for 2 seconds. The boots were wrong. Not fashion wrong, not casual wrong, specifically, precisely, operationally wrong for the rest of the wardrobe. A man who had worn the same model on the deck of 3 different vessels in 3 different theaters knew exactly what kind of wrong they were. He looked back at his notebook. Clicked his pen again. He did not write the boots down. He didn't need to. The transit matrix came up on slide 7. Lieutenant Commander Serrano, the J3 intelligence officer, 38 years old and careful with his numbers, was walking through the partner nation coordination schedule for the Pacific staging element. He cited the transit window, 96 hours. He moved to the next line, 61 hours. The voice came from the wall. The woman in the polo shirt had not raised her hand, had not shifted her stance, had not done anything except produce a number from the air. Typhoon season onset. Sea state reduces the staging window by 35 hours, beginning the 14th. Serrano stopped. The room stopped. He pulled up the meteorological annex, scrolled, found the JTWC Pacific seasonal forecast, the right file number, the right classification marker, the right page. The number was 61 hours. Exactly 61, down to the calendar date. Nobody had asked the coffee girl. Nobody had to. She had already decided the room needed the right answer more than it needed her cover. Kraft turned to look at her for the first time since the carafe. Really look. His expression was not impressed. It was the specific annoyance of a man whose performance has been interrupted by a prop. He spoke to Webb, not to her. Someone brief the contractor on what stand by to support means in a classified environment. She's here to pour, not to brief. Webb produced one short laugh, performative and well-timed. He glanced at the woman. She did not move. Affirm. Serrano professionally addressed her directly. Where are you getting the sea state data? She cited the annex. File number, classification marker, page number. 11 words total. Then she stopped. No elaboration. No defense of the number. No seeking of approval. Serrano wrote it down. Rourke wrote it down too. He underlined the page number and then looked at her again. Operators don't explain themselves. They answer the question and stop. A civilian contractor, with 3 months of clearance processing, would have kept talking for 90 seconds, defending, justifying, seeking some visible confirmation that the room believed her. She gave the citation. She went quiet. That was the second thing. 3 officers at the table were looking at their folders. One was looking at the wall. Rourke was looking at both, at the woman and at the table, back and forth, adding it up. He underlined the page number a second time. He did not know why. He told himself it was habit. The brief took a 3-minute break at 0820 hours. People stood, stretched, checked phones in the anteroom. Rourke adjusted his chair angle by 12 degrees. Now he could see her leg from the table, full length. The boots. Salomon chassis, matte black, speed lace, the sole profile he knew from wet deck boarding work in the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and one other place he wasn't going to say out loud. Nobody bought those boots for a desk job. Those boots had a classification, not a brand. A classification. He looked up. She was already looking at the exit on his left. Not at him, not at anyone, just at the exit, for 1.5 seconds, and then her eyes moved to the far door. 2 seconds. To the camera housing in the upper corner. 1 second. Back to neutral. The whole sweep took 4 seconds. Rourke had watched that sweep before. Just never in a briefing room. Just never on a woman holding a carafe. He excused himself with a head nod to Kraft. Unremarkable. In the corridor outside the JOC, he pulled a personal cell, not his duty phone, a distinction that mattered, and dialed a number that wasn't in any government directory. 2 rings. Someone picked up. Yeah, it's Rourke. I'm at Coronado. J3 brief. I need you to run a name for me. Civilian contractor. Badge reads BLAIR. No last name on the badge. He listened for 8 seconds. His expression did not change. That's what I thought. Don't call me back on this number. He ended the call, pocketed the phone, stood in the corridor for 4 seconds looking at the closed JOC door. Then he walked back in and took his seat. He did not look at Kraft when he sat down. He looked at the woman by the wall. By mid-morning, Kraft had decided BLAIR was a liability. Not because she had corrected the brief. He had rationalized that in 4 minutes, filed it under civilian interference. Done. What he could not rationalize was the room noticing her. In Kraft's operational architecture, noticeability belonged to him and moved outward from him the way rank was supposed to. He interrupted a transition slide just before 0900 hours. Let's make sure our support staff has a clear understanding of operational tempo. He turned to the woman and produced a slow, exaggerated explanation of briefing room protocol, his voice calibrated to the register a person uses with someone who doesn't fully understand language. Webb produced a tight smile. 2 junior officers found their folders interesting. Rourke's jaw tightened once, then released. Now, compartmented means what happens in this room stays in this room. Not that we update our social media profile about it later. Clear? The room produced a sound that was not quite laughter and not quite silence. The woman met his eyes. Sir. 1 syllable. No color. No edge. He expected something. Embarrassment. At minimum. He got nothing. This, somehow, infuriated him more than the correction had. During the break, Kraft told Webb loudly enough for 3 rows to hear that he was going to call her the briefing specialist. Capital B. Capital S. Someone wrote BS on a sticky note and placed it on the corner of her carafe. She saw it. She left it there. She left it there because it was evidence. The date and time were already in her memory. She would log them in the notebook at the next break, the way she logged everything, not because she was angry, not because it stung, but because Petty Officer First Class Daniel Reyes had not gotten a notebook. He had gotten a body bag. A partner nation training accident in the Sulu Sea in October of 2023, 26 years old. A daughter who sat in the front row of the memorial with her grandmother because her mother couldn't get there in time. 2 junior officers near the back of the room had not laughed at the briefing specialist joke. They had looked at their folders instead, which was not the same as doing nothing. Webb had noticed. Kraft had not. Webb was better at reading rooms than Kraft. The difference between a deputy and a principal was often exactly that. But he was watching Kraft this morning, not the room, and he missed the woman's eyes moving to the sticky note. He missed her leaving it in place. He missed everything. The break room adjacent to the JOC was empty for 5 minutes. The woman crossed the anteroom, entered, and pulled a small write-in-the-rain notebook from her waistband. Not her pocket, her waistband, against the small of her back where a sidearm would ride. She opened it, wrote, date, time, Kraft's exact words, witness count, 8, room number, classification level of the brief in progress, closed it, tucked it back in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. She returned to the JOC before anyone else. The notebook had 43 entries before today. Today would add 9 more. Each entry was identical in structure, timestamp, words spoken, location, witness count, classification level of the environment. It was a targeting package. It just used ink instead of ordnance. Kraft escalated in the final hour before lunch. He produced his phone and made a show of reviewing the authorization roster. He announced to the room that he was not certain the contractor held current access for the brief's current classification tier. He called the JOC duty officer on the record. I'm going to need security to confirm her access. This is a documented concern. I want it on record. He made the call to base security on the record as a formal security incident. Webb watched. 4 junior officers watched. Rourke watched from the far end of the table, his pen still, his face still, watching Kraft build an architecture he was going to regret. The woman, against the wall, said one word, quietly, to no one in particular. Stand by. Rourke heard it. He did not write it down. He was starting to understand that he didn't need to. The duty security officer arrived 4 minutes later, reviewed the contractor's clearance documentation, confirmed authorization, left. Kraft shrugged at Webb. Just making sure. The room watched the entire production. The woman reached into her waistband, opened the notebook, added 1 more entry, closed it, tucked it back. Then she looked up. Her expression had not changed. In 9 weeks, it never had. That was the point. The mission was not to react. The mission was to collect. And the target had just handed her 5 more entries. She looked up from the notebook. Her face was neutral. Her eyes were not scanning exits. For the first time all morning, they were resting, exactly 2 full seconds, on Kraft's hands, on the access badge clipped to his belt. Then she looked away. If watching her absorb that in silence made your jaw clench, hit subscribe. You're going to want to be in the room when the door closes on him. Kraft appeared at the J3 administrative office on the floor below the JOC at 11:40 hours. Not a phone call, not an email. In person, in uniform, with the specific deliberateness of a man who wants paperwork and wants it to have his name on it. Senior Chief Petty Officer Gaines, the J3 admin chief, 46 years old and 12 years in administrative billets, did not look up from her keyboard when he walked in. He dictated the formal complaint in 2 minutes. Unauthorized civilian contractor participation in a compartmented operations brief. Possible security violation. Request for formal access review. He wanted it time-stamped and a copy forwarded to the J3 SES office by close of business. Gaines wrote it down. Yes, sir. A beat, small and professional. Sir, the contractor's access tier was confirmed by the duty security officer this morning at 0947. I'm aware. He straightened his cover. Write it up anyway. She wrote it up anyway. The badge flag reached the woman in the corridor at 12:20 hours. OS2 Castillo, 26, duty security officer, visibly uncomfortable with this particular errand, explained that her badge had been flagged for secondary review per a formal complaint. She should report to the security office by 1400 and should not re-enter the GOC until cleared. He handed her the form. Copy. She took the form, did not read it, folded it once along the existing crease and tucked it into the notebook. Castillo watched it disappear into her waistband and blinked once. The security office waiting area had 4 plastic chairs, a water cooler, and a duty desk. She sat at 1345. 3 other personnel waited. She settled into the chair with the stillness of someone who has waited in worse places than this one. In 4 seconds, she catalogued the room. 2 exits, 1 interior window, camera housing, upper right corner, door hinge, opens inward, desk officer's sidearm, holstered, snapped, hallway length through the window, approximately 14 meters to the next junction. She was not anxious. She was calibrated. It took 4 seconds. 89 seconds later, she did it again. She was not casing the security office. She was doing what she always did in any enclosed space with more than 1 exit, counting the seconds it would take to reach each one. Not a habit she had chosen, a habit she had built, one operation at a time, in places where the exits mattered. Lieutenant Park ran the access review at 1400, 31 years old, apologetically professional. He asked a series of administrative questions. Her answers arrived one at a time. Affirm. Negative. Affirm. Correct. Standby. Confirmed. Park typed. Halfway through, he paused, looked up. Ma'am, I have to ask, have you done this before? A security review? Negative. Park nodded. Returned to his screen. She had been through 11 security reviews in a classified context, 6 of them in cover identity. The correct answer to his question, technically, was affirm. But cover identity answers in single syllables. It's cleaner. She wasn't lying to him. She was being precise. This was never the same twice. That was the whole point. She returned to the jock corridor at 15:30 hours. Cleared. A seaman runner, young, wordless, precise about the handoff, gave her a sealed manila envelope. Her name on it in hand. BLAIR. No rank, no last name. She opened it without breaking stride. Read the single card inside while walking. Did not change pace. Pocketed the card. It read, Security review closed. Complaint logged as unfounded. Your authorization is intact. R. Rourke passed her in the corridor 30 seconds later. He did not make eye contact, but he slowed his pace by 2 steps. Just 2. It wasn't a warning. It was a receipt. He had made his call. The answer had come back. Whatever BLAIR was, she was protected from well above this corridor, and he had just told her, without a word, that he knew it. She reached the jock door, held her badge to the reader. Green light. The door clicked open. Through the gap, narrowing as it swung, Kraft was visible at the table, comfortable, at ease, talking to Webb, a man who had no idea the thing he'd put in motion this morning. She could see him. He did not look up. She sees everything. Rourke did not use his duty phone for the second call. He used the personal cell again, at 12:45 hours, at a bench on the far side of the Fleet Recreation Area behind Building 602. He bought a coffee from the outside cart. He walked until the foot traffic fell away. He sat down. He looked at the screen for a moment, the specific pause of a man who knows exactly what he's about to do and has made the decision already, and dialed. He had not made an unsanctioned call on a personal device since 2019, when he had called the family of a man killed in a training incident. The command had not yet officially notified. That call had been the right thing to do. So was this one. The contact was a man named Halverson. The audience heard only Rourke's side. "It's Rourke, Coronado. I'm looking at a CI audit situation, and I need a read on a cover identity. Contractor badge, name BLAIR, J3 billets, NSWC." He listened. "Yeah." She corrected a transit window in a compartmented Pacific brief. Perfect citation. Then she took a formal security complaint without blinking. He listened longer. "If she's who you think she is, walk away." Silence. Long. "That's not a question I was asking." He ended the call. The coffee sat untouched. Rourke had 32 years in naval special warfare. Enough to know what a counterintelligence audit looked like from the inside. Enough to know the shape of a CI auditor when they were embedded under cover. And enough to know, now, having made this call, having heard what Halverson's 8-second pause meant, what the contractor badge and the charcoal slacks and the 9 syllables all morning were covering. He ran the line from the other direction. Kraft was J3 operations officer. He controlled the dissemination of partner nation training schedules across Indo-PACOM. In October of 2023, Petty Officer First Class Daniel Reyes had died in the Sulu Sea during what the command logged as a partner nation training accident. Staging an accident required foreknowledge of the training schedule. Foreknowledge of the training schedule at that level required access to the J3 operations cell. Kraft's complaint this morning against BLAIR was not bureaucratic annoyance. It was not even overconfidence. It was a removal attempt, an effort to push a CI auditor out of his operational space before she finished building the package on him. Men who sell secrets to foreign cutouts cannot afford to share a building with someone who takes notes. He turned that over for a moment. The shape of it. 31 years. An 06 with a cross-service joint billet at Naval Special Warfare Command. A posting that gave him sightlines into every Indo-PACOM partner nation coordination cycle. The kind of access that would be worth a significant amount of money to the right buyer. The kind of access that looked, from the outside, like a colonel who cared intensely about J3 operations, who arrived 9 minutes early, who filed formal complaints, who treated the briefing room like a court he presided over. The kind of access that required, above all, no auditors. He finished the coffee. It was cold. Rourke returned to the JOC at 13:15. He stood in the doorway for 60 seconds. He watched the woman against the wall. She swept the room, full clockwise circuit, exit to exit, in 4 seconds. Eyes returned to neutral forward. He counted 89 seconds. She swept again. He did not need to count the third time. It was a security protocol, standard close-quarters situational awareness, drilled at the level where it becomes involuntary. Not watching the room, clearing it, the way a pilot scans instruments without deciding to. He took his seat. Kraft was at the head of the table, expansive, citing a coordination point with the kind of specific confidence that meant he had memorized this brief and didn't know what memorizing this particular brief was going to cost him. He left his notebook open when he took a call. He cited staging coordinates by name without lowering his voice. He handled the classified folder set with the casualness of a man who had decided the classification was for other people. Rourke watched him for 30 seconds. Then he looked at the woman. Then he looked back. "You stupid son of a bitch," he said it under his breath, barely voiced. No one near him. He picked up his pen. He did not warn him. Subscribe to Honor Tales. What the watcher just heard on that phone is the reason she walked into this base in the first place. The night before was the only time she was alone. Off-base quarters, Coronado. The room was sparse by intent, institutional without being institutional, the way a person lives when the point is to be able to leave in 4 minutes. A bed, a desk, A locked drawer. On the desk, beside the locked wooden box, she set 3 things: a challenge coin, worn smooth on the eagle face, a photograph folded in half, a letter whose fold crease had gone soft from handling. She did not open the box. She set the 3 objects beside it and sat down. 9 more hours, she thought. Kraft will be in the room at 07:45. He is always 9 minutes early. I have clocked it 7 Tuesdays in a row. The NCIS team is staged at Building 452. Marsh has the brief. All I have to do is stay in cover until the room is ready. Stay in cover. Pour the coffee. She picked up the challenge coin. It was not her unit coin, not her current unit anyway. It was the coin of Petty Officer First Class Daniel Reyes's team. His family had received one at the memorial. Duplicates had been issued to the cell members working his case. She had carried this one for 2 years and 4 months. The eagle face was almost smooth now from the turning. Daniel Reyes had a daughter, 7 years old in October, she thought. She was in the front row of the memorial with her grandmother because her mother couldn't get there in time. I sat 3 rows back in civilian clothes. No one knew who I was. That's the job. That has always been the job. To be in the room and not be in the room, to carry the case and carry nothing that looks like carrying. She set the coin down, unfolded the photograph. A ship's deck at night, orange emergency light from somewhere off the left edge of the frame. 5 figures in dry suits and a 6th in civilian clothes. A merchant captain, jaw set, clearly alive, clearly shaking in the way a person shakes when their body has decided the crisis is over before their mind has. The shortest figure in dry suit had one hand on the captain's shoulder. That was her, 29 years old in the photograph. The Gulf of Aden, 2021. The captain's name was Erickson. Lars Erickson, she thought. He sent a letter to the Navy, to the address they gave him, which was a postal box in Virginia with a forwarding protocol. He addressed it to the woman who came aboard last. It took 8 months to reach her. She still had not answered it. She did not know what to say to a man she had pulled from a cargo hold on a vessel she was not permitted to name, on a date she was not permitted to confirm, in an operation that did not officially exist. She put the photograph down. She did not open the letter. She had it memorized. The operation had taken 72 hours of surveillance before they went aboard. Sea State 3. Night approach. No submersibles, too shallow for the primary platform, which meant they had gone in on rubber hulls and boarded by ladder. 6 crew held in the forward cargo hold. The captain, 3 Filipino engineers, a Norwegian first mate, a South Korean communications officer. She had gone up the ladder second. She had given the stack order. They cleared the hold in 4 minutes and 14 seconds. All 6 crew off the vessel. No friendly KIA. The Silver Star had been awarded in a closed ceremony with 4 people in the room. No family, no photos. A case, a coin, 4 signatures on a classified registry, and a handshake from an admiral whose name she was not going to write down even in her private thoughts. The citation was classified at a level where it would not be read by anyone outside a compartmented access group for 40 years. She was 33 now. She would be 73 when the citation was declassified. She was not sure what she thought about that. She had decided not to think about it. 2 months after the ceremony, her handler had used the call sign for the first time. The call sign, she thought, was not for the boarding. It was not for the recovery. It was for what came after. The threat neutralized, the extraction helo inbound, the crew topside, and then Petty Officer Second Class Villanueva had a tourniquet failure in the cargo hold. Femoral bleed. She had held compression for 19 minutes while the helo was staged, and the deck was still hot. The hold smelled like diesel and rust and seawater. She had talked to him the whole time. She did not remember what she said. He kept his leg. He called her every November 15th. He didn't know why she always picked up on the first ring. Her phone lit up. No sound, just the screen. A single message, no sender name. Just a routing string she recognized. NCIS is staged. 0749. She read it. Set the phone down. Returned the coin and the photograph and the letter to the desk. Then to the drawer. Then locked it. She did not open the wooden box. She stood. 9 hours, she thought. Then it's over. Then Daniel gets his answer. The camera held on her face. The expression was not resolve. It was not anger. It was something older than both. The face of a person who had decided weeks ago and was simply waiting for the clock to catch up to the decision she had already made. She was in the jock at 0738, 22 minutes before Kraft would arrive. The room was hers for those 22 minutes. In a way, it was never hers with 11 people in it. She moved through it without sound. Folder packets at each chair, carafes on the credenza, screens activated to standby. She checked the room recording system in her first pass. JOC briefing rooms at this classification level recorded continuously during active brief status. The system was active. The small red indicator light glowed steadily in the upper corner of the room, 12 feet up, visible from any position at the table. She had been briefed that it would be. She placed Kraft's folder at his seat, head of table, left side, set his carafe within reach. She set it to his left, as always. Carafe handle at 45 degrees, as always. His preferred angle, observed over 7 consecutive Tuesdays, memorized without making a note of it because some things didn't need a notebook. People are consistent in their small habits, even when they know they are being watched. Kraft didn't know he was being watched. That was the operational advantage she had spent 9 weeks protecting. She had done this every Tuesday for 9 weeks. 45 minutes of setup, then 3 to 8 hours of being invisible. She was good at invisible. She had been trained by people who treated invisibility as a tactical discipline, who believed that the most dangerous position in any operational environment was the one nobody was watching. Today was the last Tuesday. Kraft entered at 0746. He saw BLAIR. His expression registered her as furniture, routine, present, requiring nothing. He poured his own coffee this morning, which was a tell if you were watching for tells. He was preoccupied, distracted by whatever was on his phone, not performing for Webb yet. He did not speak to her for 3 minutes. Then, without looking up from the screen, "Sweetheart, get me the access roster for today's attendees. Printed copy. Stand by." She produced the roster from the folder stack. Already printed, already collated. His name at the top, per protocol. She set it in front of him. He picked it up, read it. Looked up. "This has your badge number on it. Affirm. You shouldn't be on this roster." He said it as though he were discovering something, as though the anomaly were new. Webb entered behind him at 0750. Rourke found his seat at 0752 and positioned himself against the far wall, a position with the red recording light at his 10 o'clock and Kraft's seat at his 12. The room filled in 6 minutes. At 0803, Kraft picked up the command phone. He identified himself by name and rank. He stated, on the recorded line, the line the JOC logged automatically at every active brief session, the line NCIS had a warrant for, the line whose timestamp and content were already known to 3 people in this room, that BLAIR held insufficient clearance for the current classification tier of the brief. He stated this as a fact. Her clearance had been confirmed by 2 separate security reviews, the most recent of which was logged at 1500 hours the previous day. The statement was false. He knew it was false. He stated it on a recorded government communications line during an active counterintelligence audit. "I want it documented that her presence is unauthorized, and I want her escorted out before the brief begins. This is a formal request, and I'm making it on the record." He hung up, straightened his folder. He was satisfied. A problem managed. A nuisance removed through proper channels. He had 31 years of knowing how to use institutions as tools, and this morning he had used one cleanly and efficiently, and it would be in the record before the day was out. The recording light glowed red in the upper corner. Rourke had been looking at it since 0752. While the call played out, 3 separate staff officers had addressed the woman at the wall. She answered each one. "Copy. Affirm. Stand by." Each syllable landed like a marker. Rourke watched the recording light. He watched her. He understood now that every syllable she had produced in this building for 9 weeks was both cover and documentation. The cover holding her in the room, the documentation building the package that would close it. She had been in cover for 9 weeks. She would be in cover for approximately 6 more minutes. She was going to spend those 6 minutes doing exactly what she had done every minute before them, saying as little as possible and remembering everything. Kraft looked across the room at BLAIR with the expression of a man who has solved a problem. He believed, in this moment, that he had removed a threat through institutional process. He did not know the process was the trap. She looked at him. Something changed in her face, something small and private and almost amused, lasting less than a second. It was the expression of a person watching someone walk confidently through a door they don't know is already locked behind them. Kraft saw it. He didn't know what it meant. He looked away first. Rourke moved through the JOC door at 0753. No announcement. A head nod to nobody in particular, the unremarkable exit of a senior man who needed 2 minutes. In the corridor, he stopped, pulled his duty phone, not the personal cell, the duty phone, the one with the right contacts already loaded. He sent a single text to a single number. Now, 40 seconds later, Rear Admiral Patricia Marsh came around the corner from the building's secure entrance. She was in working khakis, 54 years old, commander of Naval Special Warfare Group, and she moved through the corridor with the specific, unhurried speed of a flag officer who knows exactly where she's going and has already decided what happens when she gets there. 2 aides followed. They stopped at the JOC threshold. They did not enter. Marsh looked at Rourke. He gave her the situation in 9 words. Kraft just put a formal removal request on record. How long ago? 4 minutes, recorded line. She nodded once, pushed through the JOC door. The room knew before she spoke. Rank recognition in a military space is involuntary. Something in the posture, the pace, the way a flag officer's presence changes the air pressure. 11 people straightened without deciding to. Conversations died. Folders closed. Kraft began to rise. Reflex. Protocol. 31 years of standing when a flag officer enters. Marsh stopped him with a look. Not a word. Just a look. She did not address the room. The room had gone quiet the way rooms go quiet when a flag officer enters and doesn't immediately speak. A particular quality of silence. Not stunned, not polite, but anticipatory. The silence of people who understand that something is happening and are calibrating their response before it fully reveals itself. Webb had half risen from his seat. 2 junior officers were watching Marsh. Rourke was watching Kraft. Kraft was watching Marsh, and beginning to understand, at the edges of his awareness, that she had not looked at him. Flag officers always look at the senior person in the room first. She had not looked at him. She was looking somewhere else. She looked past Kraft, past Rourke's empty chair, past the long mahogany table and the 11 people arranged along it. She found the wall. She found the woman in the navy polo and charcoal slacks who had been pouring coffee in this room for 9 weeks. Ghost One. This brief is now compartmented. You have the deck in 3 minutes. Colonel Kraft will remain seated. The room did not move. The room did not breathe. In 11 years of active service, Avery Hollis had heard her call sign spoken aloud in 4 classified environments and once, quietly, in a hospital corridor after the Aden recovery. She had never heard it spoken in a briefing room in front of 11 witnesses while wearing someone else's badge. She had never needed to, until today. Kraft's face moved through 6 things in the space of 4 seconds. First, confusion. The Admiral had addressed the contractor. Second, deeper confusion. She had used a call sign, a tactical call sign, in the JOC. Third, disbelief. The contractor was not a contractor. Fourth, calculation, rapid, failing. The security complaint he had filed 12 minutes ago, the removal request, on the record, on the recorded line, the recording light. Fifth, recognition, 9 weeks, every Tuesday, the notebook in her waistband, the single syllables, the transit correction, the clearance reviews she had walked through without flinching because she was the one running the audit. Sixth, horror. He knew what a counterintelligence audit was. He knew what ghost meant in this building. He knew what it meant that she had been in this room for 9 weeks, and he had just placed a documented false statement on a recorded government communications line in front of her, in front of witnesses, in front of a flag officer who had been staged and waiting for exactly this moment. What? Seated, Colonel. Rourke stood. He crossed the room to Kraft without hurry. 14 feet, 12 steps, the pace of a man who has made this kind of crossing before in places with worse acoustics. He unclipped Kraft's CAC card from the belt lanyard. He removed the sidearm from the holster with the practiced economy of someone who has done similar things in 3 different theaters. He set both on the table in front of Marsh's position. At the rear of the JOC, the door opened. 2 NCIS special agents in civilian dress, credentials visible and forward. The lead agent read Kraft his rights in a level, unhurried voice. 41 seconds from first word to last. The room watched. 11 people. Not one of them moved. Because in that room, on that morning, everyone except Kraft already understood what kind of morning it had become. Hollis moved from the wall to the head of the table. Same economy she had moved with everywhere for 9 weeks. Quiet, total, no wasted motion. She removed the civilian badge from the lanyard, set it on the table beside Kraft's CAC card, picked up the remote for the classified screens. The first slide she pulled up was the Pacific Theater operation Kraft had planned to brief this morning. The same operation he had sold to Island Watch Maritime Logistics, a Singapore-registered defense contractor, registered at an address in the financial district, functioning as a cutout for foreign collection on United States Special Operations training schedules across Indo-PACOM. Her version of the brief had 3 additional panels. The Island Watch corporate structure, 4 layers deep to the financial account. The collection timeline, 21 drops across 31 months. And 1 name. Tan Boon Pin. She looked at the room. 11 faces. Stand by. 1 syllable. Then she briefed. The NCIS agents moved Kraft toward the rear door. At the threshold, he turned. Involuntary, human. The reflex of a man who cannot leave without understanding the thing that ended him. Hollis did not look up from the briefing panel. Her eyes tracked him across the room for exactly the 1 second it took him to cross the threshold, then returned to the report on the table. The network took 72 hours to dismantle. Island Watch Maritime Logistics lost its Singapore charter on the first day. 41 digital files transferred to NCIS and Allied Intelligence Services in a coordinated data request that the Singapore registry processed in under 4 hours. The company's shell structure collapsed through 4 layers, holding company to parent entity to trust to financial account, registered to a name no one at the bottom of the chain had ever heard spoken aloud in a conference room. 11 mid-tier officials at 3 commands were placed on administrative leave before close of business on the second day. Badges pulled, CAC cards flagged. 2 of them had spent time in the JOC where she'd worked for 9 weeks. 1 had exchanged 6 words with BLAIR and thought nothing of it. He had time now to think about it. 2 flag officers, 1 at Indo-PACOM J3, 1 at a 7th Fleet Component Command, were referred to the Department of the Navy Inspector General on the second morning. Their names were not spoken aloud in the narration. They knew their names. The IG would know their names. That was sufficient. 21 separate intelligence drops were reverse engineered in the 3rd day's working session, each one traced to a specific document, a specific handler, a specific date and classification level. The targeting package Hollis had built over 9 weeks, 43 notebook entries before the morning of the brief, 9 more on the morning itself, accounted for 16 of the 21. The remaining 5 were confirmed through the document Serrano handed over. It took 72 hours to dismantle what had taken 3 years to build. That's not unusual. Networks are slow to build and fast to burn. The hard part is finding the match. Serrano met with the NCIS investigators on the 2nd afternoon in the J3 administrative office. He had been the one walking through the compromised transit matrix on slide 7. He had accepted the correction from the wall without defensiveness, had written down the citation, had pulled the meteorological annex. He had been professional in a room that was not, and he had done it because he was a careful officer who had known for 7 months that the numbers in the J3 operations cell were not adding up. He had raised the discrepancies twice in routine staff meetings, and been told twice that they were administrative artifacts of the partner nation coordination lag. He had written that explanation down because he was a man who wrote things down, and because something about the phrasing had bothered him, and because he had learned over 14 years of intelligence work that the things that bothered him were usually worth the paper they cost. The investigator asked him whether he had any prior awareness of the leak. Serrano's answer was immediate and complete. I knew the numbers were wrong. I thought it was sloppy staff work. I didn't know what it was being used for. I should have pushed harder. I didn't. That's on me. He slid a folder across the table. Informal, unofficial, personal. 7 months of dates, discrepancies, questions he had raised in the cell and been told to drop. It corroborated 6 of Hollis's notebook entries exactly. Timestamps matching to the hour. Serrano had not known what he was building. He had just known something was wrong and hadn't been able to stop noticing. Sometimes that's enough. In the NCIS operations cell at Coronado, at hour 68, a duty agent looked up from a terminal and read from the screen in a flat, factual voice. The vessel at the registered mooring, Spratley Sector 7, is empty. Departed approximately 6 hours before the interdiction team arrived. No vessel ID. Tan Boon Pin is in the wind. A brief silence. The agent closed the file. The narration did not editorialize. It was not the end of the case. It was the end of this chapter. If you stayed all the way to the salute, subscribe. There's another mission queued for tomorrow, and the next operator is already in the room. That evening, she sat on the seawall at North Island. Her own clothes, finally, jeans, a navy pullover, worn sneakers, not boots. The water below the seawall was black in the early dark. The lights of San Diego Bay were on across the channel, their reflections in the water moving with the tide. She had Daniel Reyes's challenge coin in her hand. She had held it for 3 minutes. She was not doing anything with it. She was not crying. She was not triumphant. She looked the way a person looks when they have finished something they were carrying for a long time, not empty, not unburdened, just at the moment before the next weight arrives. She did not know yet what shape it would take. The seawall was 300 meters of reinforced concrete running along the western edge of North Island. She had found this bench 6 weeks into the assignment. The 3rd time she needed somewhere that wasn't the quarters and wasn't the JOC and wasn't the cover. It was a useful bench. It faced west and the water was always moving and there was nothing on the water to watch that required her to be anything other than what she was. She had come here 4 times in 9 weeks. Each time she left the notebook behind. A small aircraft, a trainer, carrier qualification pattern. The distinctive sound of a single turbofan running touch-and-go circuits came around the pattern to the north and descended toward the airfield behind her. She listened to it pass. The sound faded east. The water kept moving. Her phone lit up. No sender identification, just a routing string she recognized. 4 words and a designation. Ghost is still standing. Tan is in the Spratless. Coded greeting. Tango Echo. She read it twice. Closed the message. Looked at the water. Put the coin back in her pocket. She didn't know yet where the Spratley's assignment would take her, or who she'd be when she got there. She never did. That was the job. That had always been the job. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.